so inspiring to listen to those workers who have been at the sharp end of this, and solidarity to all of them. I want to start with a quote, which is this: "Our Charter of Employment Rights will give all working people basic rights that will come into force from the first day of their employment. We will give them the same legal rights to every worker, part-time or full-time, temporary or permanent." That was John Smith, the Labour Party leader, addressing the TUC 27 years ago this week. Now, some of the young workers you heard from earlier in this contribution weren't even born when that speech was made. And today, 27 years on, we still don't have equal rights for all workers. In fact, in many ways, the situation has got worse since that speech was made then. And that was the pressing issue for John Smith. Now, of course, he died the following year. New Labour came in and the Labour government didn't deliver on that vision. It did a lot of other things like the minimum wage and so on, which we can appreciate, and tax credits, but it didn't achieve that. So the fight today is still just important for equal rights for all workers from day one in employment. And nowhere, I don't think, is that more obvious than on sick pay. I think the coronavirus crisis has taught us that. Nearly 2 million workers are excluded from sick pay at all, as I think Richie mentioned, because they earn less than £120 a week. So if you're on minimum wage and you work part-time, you're on 0 hours contracts, that sort of thing, you don't even get a minimum of sick pay. And sick pay is just £95 a week. Now, some workers, if you're with a good employer, often if you're in a unionised workplace, often in the public sector, although not entirely, you will get contractual sick pay, meaning that if you're off sick, up to whether it's a matter of weeks or even months in some cases, you'll get your full pay. If you are genuinely sick, you will get your full pay. That is your contractual right. Now, other workers, of course, as we know, have no contractual sick pay and rely on statutory sick pay to survive, which is £95 a week. Now, in March, Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, was on BBC Question Time and was challenged by Francis O'Grady. Could you survive, Matt, on £94 a week? It's gone up by £1 and £1.50 since then because of the inflation rise in April. He said no. So the government admits you can't survive on £95 per week. So according to the TUC, statutory sick pay in the UK is the equivalent of just 29% of average pay, take-home pay. Now that compares massively unfavourably to comparable schemes in the rest of Europe, where sick pay covers 100% of average pay in Germany, up to a certain threshold to exclude the very highest earners. It's 93% in Belgium, 64% in Sweden, 56% in the Netherlands, 42% in Spain, but just 29% here. But even throughout this crisis, the government hasn't raised it. It hasn't done anything for the nearly 2 million workers who are excluded from statutory sick pay. So if you're one of those workers, if you're one of those 2 million, or if you're one of the millions and millions of others, and I haven't got an accurate figure on that, but it'll be probably at least half of the workforce, so probably another 15 million, that sort of ballpark we're talking about, which the government admits isn't enough to live on, you're only getting 95, then you've got a choice, haven't you? You can either be destitute or you can drag your ill and contagious carcass into work so that you do get your wage. Now that is a choice that's bad enough generally when people have got the flu or a cold, because they infect the rest of the office, they infect the people they travel into work with on a bus or a train or whatever else as well. There's good reasons to put decent sick pay in place all the time. When we're talking about coronavirus, it's all the more important. And when we're talking about workers like care workers, many of whom do not get contractual sick pay and only get £95, when you're talking about outsourced NHS workers who are working on the NHS estate in hospitals as cleaners, porters, catering staff, security, most of whom have been outsourced and aren't entitled to the terms and conditions that NHS workers like nurses and doctors and physiotherapists and all the rest are entitled to, then you are putting people in contact with the most vulnerable people in need of care, and saying you've got to come into work or you're going to be destitute, because that's what our system does to people. And that's why we need this campaign. Getting sick is part of life. We all get ill from time to time. And a lot of us will have dragged ourselves into work at times for all different kinds of reasons to do it. But I tell you something, a civilised society does not abandon you to destitution if you get ill. So to go back to where I started with John Smith, our campaign is for full sick pay now. Every worker, full-time or part-time, temporary or permanent, should be entitled to full sick pay from day one in the job. And that's the important campaign we have to fight for. Now, some employers offer that already. And the question really is, why should they be undercut by the bosses and employers that don't offer that? Because if you're one of those generous employers that does do that, and it should be a standard thing, really, and it's for the benefit of the rest of your workforce as well to have people isolating when they're sick, then then they should be doing it too. So I think it's unanswerable, and I think the case is that it should be a contractual obligation on every employer from day one to provide contractual sick pay at your rate of pay. And that way, nobody is excluded. Nobody is getting £95 a week unless that's what they work on anyway. But we can talk about raising the living wage as well. There's lots of other campaigns that need to go on alongside the campaign for full sick pay to improve workers' rights, to improve job security, to improve pay in this country. But that's the case for full sick pay now, and I think it's unanswerable. And I hope the TUC Congress next week, which is an online event, I think entirely now because of the limit to 6, backs it next week. And credit to the Bakers Union, to Sarah Woolley and to Ian Hodson, who I think are speaking later, for again leading a vital campaign, not just for your own members and your own sectors and your own industry, but for all workers in all industries, because this matters, and that's why it should be backed. And just 2 other quick points before I stop, just about within my time, I think. Well done to Don't Leave Organise for organising tonight's rally and backing the campaign so fulsomely. But can I just say one other thing as well? And I won't start a separate rant on this, which I easily could, and I won't, I promise. Nadia, cut me off if it looks like I might. But if £95 on sick pay isn't enough to live on, then neither is the £73 that people on job seekers allowance have to live on. Neither is the £58 that people who are under 25 and on job seekers allowance have to live on. That isn't enough. And nor, too, is the £66 a week that is carers allowance. That is people who are looking after often a relative, full-time, 35 hours a week just to get it. They are given £66 a week to live on for supporting somebody full-time. That is a disgrace as well. So we have to, as well as fight lots more related campaigns for workers' rights and improved pay, we also have to fight to end poverty in our social security system, because it doesn't provide social security and it doesn't provide a safety net, and we have to fight all of these battles too. But this is a great campaign and vitally important in the context of COVID. So full solidarity with the Bakers Union and all the other workers in all industries fighting for this.